Welcome back, everyone, to the fourth installment and final installment to the walk around for for Her Majesty. So again, Her Majesty is a 1959 Jaguar Mark I. Again, not the one that everybody covets because the back window is smaller or the cabin smaller or whatever. It looks the same. It drives the same. And so this will be our walk around on the outside. Now, first thing you'll notice that's different about the body is the piston liberation front, patent pending trailer fenders. Again, the Jag is about 2 inches wider on each side than the body of the Mark I. And I thought about making fenders, and I thought about doing all this stuff and box flares and all this other stuff. And I was getting my drive shaft made, and I get it done at a truck place, and they just happen to have fenders, and they happen to be the right radius, and they're only 20 bucks a piece. So cut a fender up, covers the tire. I need to, remount them. They need a little bit of work, but I think it's also a nice deterrent to keep people away from you too. Go ahead and bump me. Go ahead and rub me. I dare you. Starting from the front of the car. Again, radiators up front. Dual fans. Again, Jaguar XJ6 parts. The overflows Jaguar. Power steering is Jaguar. I tried to keep as much Jaguar stuff from the original car as possible to reduce costs. The radiator is actually, again, Summit. It's the biggest radiator that would fit in the Jaguar, and realistically, probably the biggest one that'll fit in this car. I can probably go a little bit wider, but that's why it's also angled. I didn't want to cut into the frame as much as I did on the Jaguar. So again, here you can see the transmission cooler. You can see the engine oil cooler. Underneath that is the power steering cooler. Here we have the upper radiator hose that goes into the motor. And this has a regular distributor. It's electronic from the fact that the computer changes the timing, but it still has a rotor inside, and it still sends spark through the distributor, so that has to be placed correctly. I have a remote oil filter on the car, along with a one-wire alternator, GM style. I use one little tiny belt that runs the water pump, the alternator, and and it runs right off the crank. Okay. Now, the whole reason why most of this build why I've redesigned the car is because I had to build this intake manifold. And the reason why I had to build the intake manifold is previously where that little cutout was where the original air intake was. And that's a little bit too close to the driver for Lemons to be okay with that. So I spent the last couple months basically machining all those parts, welding together the plenum, welding together the runners, the actual injector bosses. Those are actually 5-axis. We have an Akuma that I built those on. The tubing comes from what's it come from? Columbia River Mandrel Bending. So I bought that, machined the rest of the parts. I get my material from, in this case it was from Middle Supermarket because I didn't need a bunch. But it uses all stock Jaguar wiring and sensors and everything else. So basically everything inside the car is still all stock Jaguar, stock shifter, stock everything. Now, this area that you see here next to the runners, all this area needs to have a firewall. So the firewall is basically going to come up here and curve over, similar to how it was before, but before it was over about 8 inches. So it really didn't give, you know, in this case I've got probably, you know, 6 to 8 inches between the steering wheel and the motor. That wasn't the case the first time that I initially built the car. So I ran the car the first time with no gauges. Gonna try to remedy that this time. Again, stock Jaguar pedals, and little Pro Car SCAD seat. All the electronics are all stock Jaguar. I really haven't done too much. I took some of the luxury stuff out. I've got most of the engine down to its smallest harness, but the next thing is going to be, as you can see, everything from the transmission forward is pretty taken care of, but everything from the firewall back is still kind of hanging out. Now, as far as the brakes are concerned, I use like a 78 Mustang 2 booster. It's the smallest one, and it has a regular 4-bolt mounting. The nice thing about that is it uses all the Mustang master cylinders all the way up to, you know, what am I thinking, like 2002 or so. So you can do like a Mustang GT, or you can do a Cobra master cylinder, which allows me to push those big old calipers. But again, this is like $70, and this is another $70, and they're easy to install, and you can get them anywhere. And so really the only thing that's left in the engine compartment that would be hard to replace would be like the overflow tank. I probably need to look at, and maybe need to look at, you know, the Jaguar specific stuff that would come off a car historically and not necessarily out of a parts bin. So as we, the windshield's poly. The reason being is I can't find a windshield for less than $1,500. So that's why that is. And I think I was going to do some other work on the car. Like, I got a list of stuff I want to work on, but I think I might start painting it today. That's something that we historically haven't done with our team, is actually get the theme going. So you can see here in the back, I've got the wiring harness all balled up. What you're looking at is you're looking at the CPU, the ECU, and the trans controller. And then again, one little battery. It is a 4-door, which makes it super easy to work on. I have the front doors off right now because it's just easier to get in and out of the car. Currently we run like an 8-inch Corvette wheel on the car, so 8-inch Corvette. Let me see, Pontiac G8 will work. I converted the Mark 8 rear end to Chevy bolt pattern, so everything on the car is Chevy. The back windows poly, and again, what's in the trunk? We have our fuel cell in the trunk. Currently we're running an 18-gallon fuel cell. It was just the one that kind of fit in the Jaguar. So as we get, hopefully, as this car gets all the bugs out of it this year, hopefully we can go to something a little bit larger capacity. As we make our way around to the other side, again, you can see where the trans is. Some of you might be wondering if it gets hot in the car. That's why I added all the excuse me, heat wrap. So we'll rewrap all the heat wrap. I'm going to put an air gap between the exhaust and the rest of the interior. So really, this whole thing came about because I had to take all of this which is the intake manifold piping, and put it over on the other side of the motor, because having it on the other side, it caused the firewall to be too close to the driver. So I put it together. I knew Lemons want me to fix it, and so I fixed it for this year. It's a 4-speed trans, excuse me, ZF trans. Haven't had any problems with them. I run O'Reilly's fluid in them. They've been great, no problems. The other reason I went to the Mark 8 rear end is, if you can look on the shifter, it's got a J-gate on it. So that J-gate allows you to go between second and third and actually manually shifts. So the reason I changed the rear end out is the gear ratio works better for the Ridge as far as running that second, third gear change all the time. So that's what I'm hoping to get a chance to try this year. Now currently the air filter sitting in the door, excuse me, which I'm not super stoked about. I'm trying not to cut holes in the door. So I think what end up going to happening is we're going to come from here, go 180 degrees, go right above the exhaust right by the valve cover there, and then I'll punch a hole in the firewall right here to go ahead and have air come from the headlights to run the motor. So that way I don't have to cut a hole in the door, and I'll just run sheet metal here as an air gap between the exhaust and the cold air coming into the car. I'm not really super worried about overheating the air too much. I'm just happy the thing runs, considering that's a air intake that I built in my garage. The one thing you'll notice is that the accelerator cable currently goes through the windshield. I haven't really looked at that other than the fact that that works, so that might stay. I might just have to run that because of the cam system that's on the throttle body. That's where all the height comes from. So I haven't really looked at it, but that just seemed to be the easiest way. So that's where I started. But yeah. So if your choice is to, this is kind of why we're building the Econoline, is this, you know, this is one solution for mid-engine, but really if you can get the engine behind the driver, it makes things so much easier. So that's why we're, you know, trying to figure out a way to run a forward control car and put the engine in the back seat. So now the time that all of you have been waiting for, how do you start a Jaguar, and you know, how reliable is it? So let me go ahead and hit the kill switch. I need to look at that. Ignition, fuel pump, push the starter button. For those of you who are wondering how how much vibration that has, you're just sitting on the intake manifold itself, and you could see how little the motor actually vibrates. It actually vibrates worse at idle. It smooths out as you go up through the RPM range. So this was originally the Jaguar. It is now Her Majesty. We've got another car over there on the side there. That's going to be another Jaguar powered Corvair. That's called the Enabler. So hopefully either today or tomorrow I'll get the suspension in that. But all the big projects are done on this. I just got a couple more little things to do and she'll be ready to race again. So she raced not last year but the year before. No problems other than time. So this year will be, this year if we get back to racing, hopefully she'll be able to go back out again. So I heard some rumblings about HPR opening up. I've heard some rumblings about Pacific Raceways opening up. So as soon as one of those opens up, I'm going to take her out for a track day. And then if High Plains opens before the Ridge does, it just means that I end up driving to Colorado. So there's worse things. So anyway, that's Her Majesty. Hope everybody enjoyed the video, and I'll see you out on the track.